I first learned Reiki back in 2009. I became a Reiki Master, which is the highest level, in 2010, and eventually started basically wanting to explore that more. And I had started with Western medicine. That was an obvious route. So, I'm a licensed EMT still. I worked at Good Shepherd Hospital, things like that. And I was going to go into nursing school, but was really drawn to Eastern medicine, was drawn to my Reiki training even more, and got involved, learned a lot more about acupuncture. And there was something so incredible to me about it. The fact that you could access a person's energy through these points on the body, like, it just fascinated me. And then just the fact that I was so aware of energies growing up, I thought I was crazy, actually. I thought I was totally nuts and insane. Having this awareness, you really start to think that there's something wrong with you. So Reiki was it was my doorway into starting to understand and work in a thoughtful way with the energies around me. And it was such a loving, wonderful thing that once I finally switched and made the choice to, instead of going into nursing school, instead of going into PA school, physician's assistant, I was looking at that at one point too. I was like, I have to follow my calling. Like, it was just so strong in me that I finally went, all right, cool. I'm going to switch over. I'm going to go to acupuncture school. I'm going to do it. And I remember the sheer panic that I had making that choice, because it was the first time in my life I really made a choice for me and not for what I thought I should be doing or what I needed to do. And after that, I honestly, because I had started to get back into, because I got out of Reiki for a while, like, I stopped using it. I had a lot of really difficult things happen in my life. I had my son, which was wonderful, but also, it's a challenge. But then I got back into it. I just got drawn into it when I started to go, like, all right, I'm going to go to acupuncture school. I'm going to do this. And soon after that, I think I was in school for probably about 6 months or so, and I had this then strong pull to open this Reiki practice. And a lot of it was because I was terrified that I would get out of acupuncture school and not have a job. Because going from something like nursing, it's like, oh, you can go anywhere, you're guaranteed, there's tons of specialties, and then taking that leap to really follow what was inside of me, what was really calling me. So it pushed me, but that fear actually used it, and it pushed me over the edge, and I opened up my business, and it was crazy. The more I started to do the work on myself and really start to learn how to nurture me, use this energy in a really thoughtful way, and use it all of the time, then people just started showing up. And I remember this very plainly. I was like, all right, universe, like, I need this checklist of stuff needs to happen in order for me to do this. If you really want me to open this business and go for it, like, I just felt it in my body. And I just watched like magic as each little one got ticked off, like every check box. I mean, as like I was saying before, before we began, I'm a single mom. Like, I was working 2 jobs and then going to school full time, and then on top of that, to then open up my own business. There was a lot that needed to fall into place, and I just watched as it all unfolded, like right before my very eyes. And the more I did it, the more people showed up, the more I was able to unlock who I am as a person. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. And energy work, along with being in acupuncture school, got me through. Like, being able to do it. I got acupuncture every 2 weeks from my, Lisa, my partner here. And I was doing a weekly share with another energy work practitioner. It changed everything. So I was the most stressed in my life and the happiest at the same time. So it's been amazing. But just being able to listen to that whisper inside of me that's like, no, Erin, like, there is something to this. Yes, most of the world may think you're totally nuts, but and just the incredible amount of crazy stuff that's happened in the past, because I've had my business about 3 years now. Just an amazing amount of healing has taken place. I feel so fulfilled and in alignment, and there's just this ease and beauty that I never had. My whole life was very hard before this. Like, there was a lot. I had It was a very interesting upbringing. My parents divorced when I was very young. My mother struggled with alcohol and addiction, so I ended up being estranged from her for most of my life until she died in my early 20s, mid-20s, from cirrhosis of the liver. And my dad, you know, I remember when they broke up, which I want to say I was probably around like 12 or 13, I had this realization that I didn't know who my dad was. He was a very hard worker, but he wasn't there because he was always working. He was always just trying to meet ends meet. So having this void of my mother being gone and having the awareness, especially as I've come to understand being so sensitive to energies and being so sensitive to her, and she had those kind of abilities too, was really, really difficult. And then I have, you know, 2 older brothers and a younger sister, and so that dynamic as well. Some of my family members ended up becoming very egotistical, narcissistic. So there's a lot of control happening amongst my family members into my mid-20s, basically. So it was an incredibly disempowering, confusing, but like I said, I'm 35 now, and I didn't get out of that situation until my mid-20s. And I had my son when I was 25. So pretty much right up to that, was just obliterated. Like when I finally got out of that, and like I said, it was just very controlling with some of my family members, the way that went. I was totally disempowered. My self-esteem was like non-existent. It was awful, like really awful. And when I finally got out of it, just realizing how we have these bright lights in us that can never be put out, ever. Like, it's just not possible. So me going through all of that, me, you know, dealing with my mom, me dealing with not having a really good relationship with my dad, it's much better now, thankfully. It's just amazing to me how far I've come, and I know that I'm not special in that everybody has this capacity, everybody has this potential. It just takes tuning out or off all of this external distraction and noise and really tuning into yourself, because when I look back, it was always there. It's just how I interacted with myself, who I was with myself, because I was so busy trying to please the people around me and just make sense of it. You know, I had a lot of issues with money, you know, I all these kinds of things. It was always a situation where I was just trying to survive. I was just trying to get from day to day and survive, and just keep breathing, basically. I think that at the core, especially in our culture, there is this air of control, and you know, it's a complex issue for sure, but at the end of the day, we come into these bodies, you know, and whatever your point of view is about that, whether there's a soul or not, whatever that is or whatever that looks like, we come to these bodies and we're naturally healing. Anybody who is naturally caring and nurturing, we're healers. So we come in going, I really want to help the world. I want to change the world. And what happens is, as young children, we get conditioned out of it. And so what is taking place is, as we're our bright, beautiful selves, and then we encounter cruelness and unkindness, we don't know how to process that as these little beings, so we retreat into our minds. And the mind is one aspect of our being, but most people live there. And I lived there most of the time for a very long time. In fact, most of my life. And it basically creates this structure of control, and anything outside of what our conclusions are, our judgments are, our belief systems that we actually picked up from other people, anything outside of that, it's considered a threat. It's a threat to the ego, it's a threat to, you know, whatever stories we've constructed for ourselves, and it keeps us trapped. And then what happens is, if you have somebody come in that is so different, that's like, no, but what about this and what about that? It is threatening to that structure. And so people have 2 ways of reacting to that. It's, you know, it's this nervous system, fight or flight. You either fight it or you run away from it. And so that's what happens. If you come in and you truly be you, whatever that is for you, whatever that energy is, people are going to react. And so because we're who we are, people reacted when we were young poorly to that. They didn't like it. They didn't understand it. So we just shut it down because we, as little beings, learn to seek validation and love outside of ourselves. And so the moment that happens, because think about that as a baby, you physically can't survive without your parents. So you learn from a very real place that if these two giants don't love me and accept me, I'm going to die. So it really does, you can trace everything back to that. And what happens is in those moments we give away the love and validation for ourselves, who we are. And that you just see it play out more and more. So then what happens is it no longer becomes, when we're children, it's how do I please myself? Then it becomes how do I please these giants, our parents, and then siblings and friends and society. And so as that process continues on, it gets more and more, we get more and more ingrained in what we think we should do. And in order to sustain that, you have to retreat to your mind. There's definitely a shift. I think there has been. Now, I'm 35 right now. I actually got really interested in acupuncture when I was in my early 20s, but that just wasn't the time. Like, something about that, even though I was really drawn to it, I think cosmically I sort of understood. I was plugged in enough to go, okay, not yet, not yet, not yet. But when it was time, it was like, boom. And it was just go. It was totally go time. And I really find that people are transitioning out. A lot of it has to do with, I'm going to use the healthcare system as an example, but it spans past healthcare. But the Western way of thinking, the very linear way of thinking, which has its place, absolutely. It's an important aspect of everything. But people are learning that doing it in a Western way is not actually healing them. And over time have started to become frustrated and shift out of that. And so as we shift out of that, what's happening is people are slowly opening themselves up to different cultures, different ideas. And Eastern medicine, I mean, it's been around for thousands of years. Now, Reiki itself, the form that I use, has only been around since the early 1900s. But healing techniques like that have been around for thousands of years. So people start in the West, we're starting to open up and go, wait, there might be something to this. So we're noticing a softening of the mind, an opening up of people. And so things like Reiki are, now it's in hospitals, like especially with cancer centers and people dealing with that, they're starting to understand it more. Same thing with acupuncture, that's now in hospitals too. And so it's becoming, people are really opening up and shifting and getting to know like, oh, there's not just this, like there's the whole being and the whole body, and learning to trust it. And that's been my process, is actually coming out of the mind and coming back into recognize my entire body, my entire being, and to trust it. It's such a huge process of trust. So it's like you kind of, you do this big loop-to-loop. When I first got into energy work, when I first got into like spirituality, I always was under the illusion that I was going to become something, right? Like I was going to build up to, I don't know what I thought, maybe a guru or enlightened or whatever it was. And what just the amazing energy working with Reiki in particular has shown me is it's not about becoming anything. It's about unbecoming what you weren't in the first place. And so what does that mean? That means we're coming back to a place of being in line with nature, our own true nature, and what that is, and what that means to us, and how we show up in our world, how we show up in our lives. And by practicing and doing it, working with hundreds of people at this point, thousands of hours of doing energy work, it's so much more beautiful, and there's just so much more to it. So I really think that East and West are, I always say like they should get together and have a love child. Like they really need to come together, because there are brilliant things about the Western medical system and really brilliant things about the Eastern. And so, like I said, you can pull all of that out of just the medical system and just globally speaking, in our culture and our belief systems and how that all interplays and how it interconnects. So definitely think people are kind of waking up. Okay, so trying to explain to somebody what Reiki is a lot like trying to explain to somebody what it's like to be in love for the first time. So just getting that you really do have to experience it, and everybody experiences energy in their own unique way. So just getting that in the beginning, like at the outset. So Reiki, it's the way I succinctly say it is Reiki is a Japanese form of energetic healing that promotes wellness, reduces stress, helps relaxation, helps with basically the healing of the body. It assists the body's own natural way of healing. So what that does, how it's shown up for me in my life is I am way more relaxed, I'm way more easeful, I am happier, I am even more compassionate, I have more patience, like all of these things. It speeds up the body's healing, whether it's physical healing, emotional healing. One of the things I was never taught, but I realized after doing, practicing for so long was, that's weird. This thing happened that normally would traumatize me for weeks on end, and I'm over it in a day. It just happened. I was like, that's weird. Why did I get over it so fast? And it was like, oh, because of this energy and because of everything that is. So it really helps. I specialize more in emotional disorders. I think because of my upbringing, I think because of my own personal experiences, that's been where my gifts are. Some people have, like I had one student, she was just gifted with physical pain. Like she could just tell you everywhere in your body where it was and start to go into that. And so everybody has their own natural gifts. I remember before I actually got licensed to practice acupuncture, I was in school and I was doing Reiki sessions, and all of a sudden I was like, that's weird. I like this person, this body that I'm working with, because bodies have their own consciousness, was like, access this point. And I was like, okay. So, and I didn't have needles, like I wasn't using needles at that time, I wasn't licensed, but I could energetically still access those points. And then I would, and the person would feel better. So I was like, whoa, there's something to this. So it naturally started to show me, even before I got licensed, that you could start to blend these. And just the other day I was working with somebody, and it's really funny. I noticed that bodies have their own language, and if they have a framework and you have a framework and they match, they will just naturally ask for those things. So I was doing a session the other day on a new client, and her body wanted me to access different meridians in the body, little energy highways, access different points. And so I did, and I was like, did you get acupuncture before, after? And she's like, oh yeah, I've gotten acupuncture before. So it's like her body already understood the framework because it had experienced acupuncture in the past, and then I was a match to it as a practitioner. So I was able to actually work them in with one another. I definitely am still developing like fully my style, and this work evolves. Like any energy work evolves with the practitioner. As I evolve, the work evolves, but of combining the two together. So doing acupuncture with actual needles and then also giving Reiki at the same time, or incorporating them and having them overlap is absolutely, I love playing. I love the synergy of that. I'm not a practitioner who just sticks with one thing. I do whatever works for the client. And so sometimes that means, like if I'm doing a Reiki session, that it's very quiet the whole time and they're just receiving and they're getting into that really beautiful state. And sometimes we are laughing hysterically and talking the whole time. It really is whatever that person requires. And it does kind of fly in the face of what some practitioners think. Some of them think that it should only be one thing. It should only be one way. But for me to do, and I actually did, at one point I got called out about that by a practitioner. She's like, you're doing more than one energetic modality at a time. And I'm like, I mean, don't you? Like why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I do that? And I think that for some people, it's like they want to do it the right way. And the second you're in the right way, you know what I mean? There's one thing to have responsibility and training and to cultivate and to do the work for yourself. And there's another thing to get stuck and pigeonholed in that kind of thing. So mine just keeps evolving. I just put out a new type of session where I'm working on couples together. So at the same time I have them, and that was developed because I was doing so much work with my clients, spouses who weren't in the room, because you can do energy work from afar. And so I would connect to them and I'd be like, oh, I gotta connect to your husband. And I would do work on their husband, and this was a surprise to me, by the way, and I would be doing clearings and interacting with their husband or their wife, right, on an energetic level. And then my client would come back the next time I saw them and be like, I don't know what you did, but they're totally different now. they were not fighting, like they're really nice, like they actually heard what I was trying to tell them. So it has a varying degrees of effect. Sometimes it's like boom, and sometimes it's just like this subtle shift where they just feel a little more ease around that. So I was like, all right, how about if I just get the two of them, if they're open, in a room together, and then go from there. So it just keeps evolving, and I follow my nose, like what's fun for me, what's going to create for me. And it's one of the things I learned is follow your joy. Yeah. Like you just keep, the more interested you are, the more co-creative it is for everybody. So it's like a win-win. Yeah. Reiki itself it's basically, so it's broken down into two. It's Rei and Ki. Okay, and Ki, Chi, Prana, whatever you want to call it. It's the universal life force is how people will kind of call it. And then Rei, that is loosely translated as more of the divinely guided aspect of it. So the idea here is that there's almost like a sentience to the energy. You're accessing a really loving energy that also sort of knows what you require, each person requires. So what you do is during a Reiki class, you get what's called an attunement. And the attunement, much like if you were going to tune a guitar, I always tell my students this, like, okay, if you have two hands, and the willingness, you can pick up a guitar and start playing. But until you've got an attunement, those strings are tuned, so to speak, you're not going to be able to really play very well, right? Yeah. And so that's what I find I did energy work before Reiki, but once I did Reiki, it just strengthened that. And so you get this attunement, and what happens is you're pulling in this energy. So it's coming in through the head, into the heart, and then out your palms. And you can actually send Reiki. I don't even have to use that. I don't have to touch. I can just send it to you with my eyes if I wanted to. But we tend to use the palms because it's very sensitive. We have these minor energy centers in our hands. And what's happening is you're pulling this energy in, you're giving it to the person that you're working with, and it's going into the stuck areas, the blocks, the denser energies, the areas where things are stuck. And it's basically because it's all about coming back to a natural state. In our natural state, we're happy, everything's flowing, we're good. But when different blocks happen, that's when we get into trouble, whether it's physical pain, or it's emotional pain, or whatever the sticking point is. Reiki assists removing that. I always tell people it's like a stream, like a flowing river. If it's flowing and it's good, like everything's fine, like no problems. But if it gets blocked somehow, maybe a beaver comes and builds a dam, or there's, somebody pollutes it, or, there's giant like sticks and rocks in the way, and it kind of putrefies in a way, and it just stays stagnant and stuck. Like that's what can happen. So what Reiki would do is if, the beavers built the dam, is it would go in and it would remove that so that the river, your energy can naturally keep flowing. Because the actual nature of energy is to flow. It's just to keep moving. And so if it's ever stuck, it's because there is a belief system, there's a point of view, there's something else happening in the body that is creating that blockage. I use chakras a lot during my sessions, and I like to educate my clients too about what I'm finding and experiencing so that they can connect to it too and understand what's happening. But Reiki flows where it needs to, and then it also guides you as well. So I work a lot with them. And I get a lot of information based on where I'm drawn to with a person because that's my framework, right? If a person didn't have that framework, it would communicate with them in a different way. But I think that we are very out of balance because basically Westerners, we have this pesky habit of we engage, so there's the nervous system, okay? I'll back up a little bit. There's fight or flight, or there's rest and digest, if you remember this from like biology, right? And so you're either in fight or flight, which is rawr, I'm gonna get eaten by a tiger, which translates in our culture now as I'm stressed out because I have to be here, I have to meet this deadline, I have to pay this bill, I have to do this thing, da 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 da. So we're no longer getting, we're not afraid of being eaten by a tiger, but we do have these constant things that are bombarding us, these worries. And so what happens is it engages that sympathetic nervous system. And when that's engaged, we can't rest. We're constantly stressed out. We can't handle ourselves, and we have meltdowns, and it gets worse, and then we need pills, and we need all this different stuff to distract us, and then addiction comes in, right? Yeah. Because now we need something we just want a moment to get out of it. And so what Reiki does is it brings the person from a sympathetic nervous system response back into the parasympathetic nervous system response, okay? And that's rest and digest. And that's when you actually heal. When your body's in that state, you can actually regenerate. Regenerate your tissues, regenerate your mind, regenerate your emotions. You actually get to receive. And so that's why Reiki is so relaxing for people. Even if a person's not energetically aware, the two things they always tell me is, I feel relaxed and I feel lighter. And so they are picking up on the energies, they just don't know. The relaxation part of it is the sum total of everything we did in the session results to them in relaxation. And then the lighter aspect of it is because these dense energies have a mass to them. Like, you ever heard something, they're like, wow, that's heavy.
Yeah.
Like, that's so heavy. Like, if you say something, it's because you're perceiving the energy of it.
Yeah.
And so when they say, I don't know, I just feel different, I feel lighter, they're actually perceiving that those energies, those stuck spots, are freed now, and they don't even know it, which is really cool. So Reiki can help with it. The thing is, it's the most pragmatic thing. Reiki or other, it doesn't have to be Reiki, it can be any type of energetic work. It's so pragmatic. Like, people think of it as kind of like out there or woo-woo, or like, I don't even know if that's a thing. But the fact of the matter is, there is no part of my life that it doesn't touch.
Yeah.
No part of my life that has not been enriched by learning to work in a thoughtful way. Because the thing is, we're subject to them anyway.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather know,
Yeah.
like, more about that, and so you
Yeah.
can work with it instead of be sort of like walking around in the dark?
Yeah.
And yeah, so it really helps with anxiety, helps with depression, it helps with physical ailments because it speeds up that healing. It goes into the blockages. I've been doing more and more with physical issues as well, and especially for me as a practitioner, if they are linked to an emotional issue, then that tends to go really easily. Like, I had one lady, she came to me one time, didn't tell me she had chronic back pain, thanks, but after the first session it was gone, and it has not returned. So it can be that powerful. Now, most people don't have that awesome of a response, but sometimes they do. Like, it gives the possibility for that kind of stuff. And in the coming year, a lot. I think that I'm gonna be speaking more. I'm gonna try to be out in the community a lot more too. I'm gonna continue to cultivate my own personal sessions. I teach Reiki now, but I'm gonna be adding other classes, advanced energetic classes, where I can do one-on-one coaching, things of that nature. I've started doing community acupuncture as well, which is where a group of people get together and do acupuncture at the same time. It's much more, of an economical way to do it. So sky's the limit. I'll probably write a book at some point and do online coaching. Like, I just have so many ideas and so much more energy available to me now. So, like, I'm gonna do whatever sounds fun to me.